We are also heirs of the Viceroyalty of Peru, which encompassed 2/3 of South America. We are a mestizo nation, a fundamental mix between Hispanic and Andean peoples, proud to be the heirs of the two greatest empires of Europe and America of the 16th century. The Peruvian people today are resilient, entrepreneurial, supportive, and lovers of peace, freedom, and democracy. Our great writers, Mario Vargas Llosa and José María Águedas, shared the idea that Peru is a country of all bloods. Our identity creatively expresses that we are the unity of the diverse, united under the same red and white Peruvian flag. In our country, native peoples and peoples of the world live together in peace and unity as a great synthesis of Peru, the country in which Pope Leo XIV lived and worked in for 40 years, a naturalized Peruvian because of his deep love for our people, both for his supportive as well as his peaceful disposition and his Catholic and Christian faith. All studies indicate that we are the most entrepreneurial country in the world, which is why, after the COVID-19 pandemic, that, due to poor government administration, claimed more than 2 million lives. But we have begun to recover, and today we look back on more than 17 months of consecutive economic growth. We have overcome the recession and inflation caused by political violence and by corruption, a failed coup d'etat, and the flight of more than $20 billion. That was between 2021 and 2023. We have regained the trust of national but also of foreign investment, and we have embraced freedom. We are a solvent and a stable country. Because of the coup attempt of December 2022, which sought to establish a dictatorship by forcing all branches of the state into submission, I had to constitutionally assume the presidency of the Republic. Since that date, a narrative was established by which the coup plotter became a victim, and the president, who constitutionally and legally assumed the presidency, was accused by some quarters of being a coup plotter and usurper. Lies turned into truth, and truth turned into lies. This is one of the issues of our time. The building of false narratives to attempt to defend anti-democratic political projects. The thinking goes that ideologies of hatred, where they're projects of failed states that grow into all-powerful states, require, in order to impose their will, a false narrative, in order to achieve their objectives through violence, and who, once in power, crush freedoms, silence the press and democratic opposition, violate human rights, and begin to control, to confiscate, and to expropriate private companies, creating a corrupt bureaucracy, the economy, society, and public morality. The first step for achieving all of this is to build a narrative in order to lie, to deceive, and to manipulate. The ideology of class hatred is very skillful at distorting reality and building false narratives, because it uses the totalitarian method of repeating a lie ad infinitum, as was done in the world before the Second World War, and as is happening again today, because totalitarianism renews itself, presents itself with other faces, but it remains a serious threat to countries and to the world. The cynical narrative is reinforced by interventionism in the internal affairs of countries, supporting and spreading falsehoods to destroy democracy and eliminate freedom. In Peru, we have overcome strong, organized and persistent political violence that sought the return of the coup plotters' government, and since 2024, progress has been made in restoring stability and confidence. And this is why the Peruvian economy managed to grow this year by 3.3%. And in the current year, 2025, is exceeding 3.5% growth, with forecasts that in 2026 the trend of economic growth will continue. The government guarantees 3 years of economic growth, being the leader in South America. Inflation is below 2% annually. International reserves amount to more than $88 billion, and our currency remains stable, and it's getting stronger every day. Our external debt is less than 32.2% of GDP, one of the lowest in the Americas and in the world. And our fiscal deficit this year will be 2.2% annually. Madam President of this magnificent General Assembly, on October 24th, the UN was created after World War II, when one of the greatest totalitarian political projects built on an ideology of hatred, leading to the most serious genocide in human history, the Holocaust, was defeated. And this is something that we must never, I say never, forget. That dreadful war caused the death of 60 million human beings. All ideologies of hate, class hatred, and its elevation as a principle and driver of history, racial hatred, nationalist hatred, religious hatred, ethnic hatred, hatred against women, amongst others, are the causes for the worst crimes committed in human history. Ideologies of hatred build narratives as absolute truths that instrumentalize people and nations. The political constitution of my homeland, Peru, affirms that the defense of the individual and their dignity is the supreme goal of society and of the state. Peru, therefore, rejects the two principal hate narratives in the world, namely class hatred and religious hatred. These are the origins of wars and inhumane violence. In Peru, we suffered for more than 20 years from a messianic, dogmatic, violent and genocidal terrorism that cost the lives of more than 70,000 Peruvians. The terrorist hates elections and the citizens' right to choose and to stand for election. When they participate, they do so to destroy democracy from within. However, the narrative that they wanted to impose is a flagrant lie. The armed forces and the police, who defended the life and the freedom of Peruvians, are now accused of violating human rights. Thus, the heroes who defended life, democracy, and freedom are turned into victimizers, and the terrorists are turned into victims. In this way, the heroes who defended democracy are being persecuted in trials that drag on for decades, while the terrorists are compensated and considered victims. This is the world in reverse. The UN was a fundamental milestone in the 20th century, but in the 21st century, we must be more vigilant. It is our duty to prevent the world from plunging into new genocides and new violence. It is not acceptable in a civilized world that one country invade another using a false narrative to justify a war that first and foremost attacks the civilian population. It is not acceptable to slaughter civilians, to capture hundreds of young people, women, and even children, and use them as hostages. We live under the threat of international organized crime. In Peru, international crime based on extortion uses terrorist methods such as bomb attacks to submit citizens to its will. These criminal organizations that use weapons of war have created financial mechanisms to launder blood-stained money, sending large sums back to their countries of origin. They seek to normalize this violence, which requires, in order to be defeated, recognition by the UN as terrorist organizations and new national and international legislation to stop them being a threat to the democratic system and to the development of peoples. It is also imperative that we act against drug trafficking and illegal mining that destroys the environment, pollutes rivers, and condemns peoples and individuals to slavery. International crime has subjected thousands of women taken from their home countries through violence and deception and being exploited and deprived of their freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living through times that recall the darkest chapters of our modern history, and Peru is convinced that the world does not need less UN, but more and a better UN, one that is in tune with the times. In times in which ideologies of hatred that caused and cause so much damage to humanity have taken refuge in lies, in misinformation, and which have penetrated democratic societies. Peru, as a founding member